Hey guys, YouTube is doing a great job interpreting their community guidelines. So if you're 18 years or older, you're good to go. Otherwise, please don't watch this. It's 4:20 somewhere, and I am so happy you guys are joining us today for this very special episode of Fast Buds Talks. Because today I got cannabis royalty here. Yes, Sasha, the joint doctor himself, is here with me. How you doing, Sasha?
Very good. Very good. Thanks. How are you, Sebastian?
Yeah, I'm really good. We just talked off record for a second. We are experiencing a heat wave. You and me. I'm in southern Spain. Where are you chilling right now?
Yeah, I'm in Quebec, just east of Montreal.
Okay, so wait 1 second, because I had myself sorted out. That's kind of like close to where you're originally from, right?
Oh yeah, I live down the road from where I grew up. Actually, I've been back here for a number of years. My wife and I came back and bought a little farm here. So yeah, it's a really nice area here, just by the border with Vermont.
Okay,
so,
cool.
Yeah.
It sounds really beautiful, especially right now, like summer, spring, fall sounds beautiful. How about the winters? I'm not a big lover of really cold weather. I think it can get quite cold there, no?
Yeah, pretty cold. I mean, it can get down to minus 30. That's probably the coldest it can get. Sometimes it's, in January, February, it gets quite cold. But we do get a lot of snow, so there's a lot of activities that... I mean, especially here in Quebec, we love like winter activities, hockey, skiing, anything that happens on ice just makes us happy. So, no, I actually quite like the winter, and I have a weekend job actually working at a ski hill just to keep me in shape.
Yeah, you said that during Spanibus. I think you told me that you were walking at a ski hill. I actually had a travel and work visa for Canada. This was about 12 years ago or so. I did, maybe you could call it a mistake, or maybe I shouldn't, because I started in New York. 10 days later, I met my wife. 3 months later, we got married. Result, I never made it for the travel and work to Canada, and this with the ski hill was exactly my plan. I wanted to work at a lift or something, and just so when I'm off work I can just get a free ticket and I can just go snowboard all the time.
Yes, that's the idea. It's definitely it's amazing to work on the mountain and just be great outdoors. Doesn't matter what the weather is, and that's the main deal. Yeah, you get to ski anytime you want. So. And
is your wife from that area too? Because the amazing part about that is that's what I'm missing out on my end, or even my wife, because she's from the US. We don't get to hang with our family so much, but you guys really do, no? That's the best part about it, no?
Yeah, that's definitely one of the big reasons why we came back here, because we moved around a little bit. So my parents were very close, family, network, friends. We even have a summer festival. I don't know if I told you about it. It's called Shazam Fest. It's coming up next weekend.
Okay, cool.
So it's organized by my family, my brother, and myself, and a lot of volunteers. It's a weekend festival, music, acrobats, a lot of different things happening in our on our family farm. Nice. On my parents' family farms. So yeah, if anybody's around in the area, check out Shazam Fest.
I wish I could make it, but I'm some I don't know how many, like 8,000 kilometers away. I don't think I'm gonna make it right now. I wish I could come over.
Yeah.
Sometime I need to come and check out, make like a whole tour. Like I have so many friends now I met through this cannabis community on the internet, and I talk with them here in these chats, or I chat with them just in like the Instagram chat messenger or so, and all these people I want to just visit, and I want to see where they're hanging, where they're growing, and of course I want to test their weed.
Absolutely. Well, if you come around this area, I will definitely take you to check out the industry, both the legal industry and the underground industry here. know what's going on and hook
I
you
take
up with
I take that one day I'm coming over. I'm gonna phone you up and say, Sasha, I'm coming over, and I'm gonna come. I'll bring my camera too, so we can have some fun and share it with the community later on. So you're working, of course, Doctor's Choice. We know Lowryder, all that. We're talking about in depth about that very soon. But you also work on other projects. You're very involved in the cannabis industry. What else are you working on right now?
Right. At the moment, one of the things I'm doing is working at a processing facility. So it's actually started by two friends of mine in Montreal. It's called J2 Science.
Okay.
And they hired me to develop some products for them, specifically hashish, because that's another thing that I happen to have some skills and knowledge about. And I've been making hashish for many years, right?
Nice.
Mostly with not the residue, as they say in French, but the trim and byproducts of cannabis growing.
So how are you doing that? You're making dry sift, or you're making wash? You're making ice?
Well, in this case, we're making ice hash.
Nice.
Yeah. Just clean water, and we use very good quality trim. Actually, a variety called Black Cherry Punch is one of our popular.
That sounds delicious, man.
Products. It is. It's a really good product. Actually, very strong as well. We've gotten tests up in the 70% THC, so that's pretty high just for and it's handmade hashish.
Nice.
Because we've discovered that you can't really replicate that product by doing it on a mass scale. There's no real way to do it. It has to be done,
It's I was planning on it on a different time too. It's kind of like with what you're getting in the legal system in terms of mass-produced cannabis versus craft cannabis. Kind of similar.
Exactly.
Wouldn't you say so? It's like, it's just that tiny top-notch better. It's not just the love. It's just like that people who are experienced are really doing this. They're really in for it, and they're on it and in the process. And
Absolutely.
that way, I think that's where that tiny notch better comes from.
Absolutely. And it's so nice to know where your cannabis comes from. I think one of the big mistakes here when their legalization, everyone thought, now it's everything's gonna be done on a big scale.
Yeah.
It's finished. Nothing's gonna be done by hand. It's all mass produced. But like you said, I mean, people don't really want mass produced. They don't want industrial weed.
It starts with the growing itself. It starts with the neutralize. It listens. Even if you have an AI tracking every plant and checking out how good it performs, it will be never like your eye looking, oh no, she definitely has some potassium deficiency, and I can treat that plant by itself, give her some extra, and that way I just have an eye on it. And then in the end, it goes over the trimming too, like who really wants machine trimmed weed? It's just something different in the end.
Exactly. But, it's coming back around to that. The operations, like they were going to go really big and grow millions of pounds. A lot of them just are going out of business. So it's coming back around to the little guy. It just, it's very hard to get into the industry when you're small.
Yeah, of course. As always.
The way it is now.
It's with everything. It's not just with cannabis, but once it becomes legal and the money pushes in, money always rules, unfortunately. But the consumers are coming around. They're realizing what's good, and I think, down the road we are on the right path, I think.
Yeah. It's so that's basically I've been trying to get in for a number of years now, getting into a position where we can produce our seeds here for the Canadian market. Okay. So I went from being sort of a medical grower and able to produce on a small scale to trying to now go into the get the legal industry and get my seeds and Doctor's Choice into Canada. But unfortunately, we're just not quite there yet. So I will. Another thing I'm doing, and I just can't talk about it very much because there's no point until the license and everything is in. But very soon, I hope to have some news. We have a facility here with a couple of my friends, partners, where we'll be basically an incubator for seed brands to come into Canada. Seed brands, like Doctor's Choice.
Okay.
But not only Doctor's Choice.
So basically like a facility, because the seeds need to be produced there, kind of, and that's the way.
That's the thing. Basically it's hard to. You could only import cannabis products for research. Okay. Basically, if you're going to sell it here in Canada, they want you to produce it here in Canada.
Similar in Thailand, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it's also things what they're planning in Germany. I think it's also the same thing. I hope down the line at one point we're gonna be able to find a way how to deal with this, just like with bad things like cigarettes or alcohol. They're available everywhere. There's no big issue with that because they have a lobby. But we don't.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Yeah, it would be nice to, one thing we're missing here is like I think I was listening to your interview last week.
Was it with the Mary
talking
Jane?
To Vince.
No, Vince was like 3 weeks ago, so something like that.
Oh yeah, right. Just about the lack of, what about the social aspect? In Spain, at least, you have the social clubs. Yeah. It's much more rational than like the legalization model that we have here. It does. So you can buy it here. It's commercialized, not legalized. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a very, very fine line. I understand it, and it's also, as we talk, there's still a gray market, black market, because people like the small ones, they can't even make it into the legal system, and that leaves them behind again. And then big money is pushing in, and in the end, corporations. So yeah. I like that about Spain. What I do not like 100% about Spain is that we don't just have a limit. Like, let's say 4 plants per person, flowering plants per person, and that is okay. And not this like gray zone. Yeah, it might be okay, it might be not. They might knock on my door and say, hey, I'm gonna take your plants, come with me. In the end of the day, I would only get a fine, but still it's kind of like a weird feeling. But I'm sure you know how that feels, because I think you went through a lot more than that. But there's one question which I wanted to ask you right away in the very beginning of this, and that is Joint Doctor. That's you. How I knew you before I even knew your face. Why Joint Doctor? How did that come about? I think everybody wants to know that.
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know if anybody's asked me that before, but it's I gotta go back to I was in college. I was like 20 years old, I think, and I was already growing some plants, and I was known for my love of weed. And my friend Paul and I were at a ski hill, and it was quite a small mountain, and there was a snowstorm, but somehow, I managed to roll a joint before we got to the top of the hill in the snowstorm. And so I was known for having, skills as a roller.
Oh, okay.
And one time I grabbed one of his joints. It was just poorly rolled. It wasn't smoking, and I was able to fix it and keep it going. And he's like, "Man, you're the Joint Doctor." And, I don't know, it just
amazing.
Kind of stuck from there. And actually, I used it as a DJ name because for a few years there, I was into playing records, vinyl, reggae, especially at parties. Cool. So I started using that as my DJ name. And underground, I was using it to write articles. I started to write some articles. So like I didn't want to use my real name back then,
Yeah. I mean, I'm still not using my real name. Good is not my last name. So it's just, it came up with something, In the end, I was a bit mad with myself that I started to keep my Sebastian, because my real first name, which nobody calls me, is Philip. So why didn't I go with Feel Good?
Yeah, well, Dr. Feelgood has been done before, you know.
True. I want to go back a little bit to your past because that interests me a lot, because you have a super interesting family background. I can relate to it very much because I feel a little bit like what your parents did, because I was for some time in bigger cities like New York and Barcelona, and eventually I wanted to get out. I wanted to go, I wanted to grow more, and even though I'm not still there, I don't have my own farm or anything, but that's what your family background is. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. My folks basically chose to move out of the city just around the time that I was born. And, you know, they, like a lot of sort of hippies back then, they were looking to just create a better life, to live a more healthy life, grow their own food, be more sustainable. So bought a small farm and started to raise goats. And so I really had a different sort of upbringing. And part of that was cannabis, because a lot of my parents' friends came to visit. We had a nice little social scene there. You know, cannabis was something that was shared, and it was never hit us, my brother and I. It was something that my parents were honest about, and you know, it didn't have a negative connotation in our family. And my father, long before I started to, you know, be interested in cannabis, I was around him growing, and also he got unfortunate troubles with the law, ended up going to prison when I was about 11 years old. So I had to take care of things a little bit more starting then on the farm, and you know, but there was this, you know, it was hard on our family, though back then. You know, it was a positive experience, I think my father would say, because, you know, he got in, when he went to prison for a year, came out in amazing shape. You know, just was like buff as hell. I was like, wow, that's my dad, you know. So we started to run cross country running from then on, and our family was in a lot of races. And so I was into sports. I wasn't into smoking, but I started to like help my father with his growing. I was responsible for watering his plants and whatnot. And so, you know, that's for sure where I got my start, continuing a little bit the legacy, because my father was really known to have some of the best weed around here. You got to understand, in like the 70s, there wasn't very many people growing yet here. I mean, it was import weed. It was, you know, seedy weed.
Yeah.
So, you know, his sense of me, it was really something special, you know, and he's still one of my biggest fans. He comes with me, my mother as well, to some conferences. He's just got a ton of amazing stories. And he tests my plants in his garden. I probably shouldn't tell you this, but
is a very good test grower. No, like having like I hope one day that I'm gonna be a test grower for a family of mine too, because I can relate to this. Cannabis has no negative connotations in my household. And my kid is only 5 years old. You know, he does ask questions eventually, and you do have things to explain, because you do have to be careful in a sense, you know, in some senses. And that is very interesting for me to see how that was for you growing up, and that you were into sports, you weren't into the plant like that, you know, like, and that is obviously very interesting. But another thing which was interesting me is kind of that your family already kind of lived an organic kind of lifestyle before organic even was a thing, no?
Absolutely. It was just starting to be a thing. It was, there were some books written about, you know, biodynamics in the 70s, and it's really where it started. And my father was, my parents both, they were well versed in that type of knowledge. They wanted to apply some of the things they learned. But my father became involved in the local organic chapter. There basically was an organization that he helped start called Organic Crop Improvement Association.
Mm-hmm.
So they ended up organizing chapters of farmers all around the world to have the first type of certification. So that's what allowed him. Eventually, he was traveling around a lot, visiting, and to help certify places like coffee growers in Peru and whatnot. Today, organics is huge, but we're there. He was there right around the beginning. So
You think maybe that's one of the reasons, other than that he knew how to chop the males down before they pollinated the females, and so he got sensimilia. Maybe the organic farming is also what made his weed special compared to others. Because my honest belief is organically farmed herbs are just tasting better, in the end.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And there's no question about it for me. And there's no substitute for, I mean, if you're going to put food or smoke, into your body, I mean, eventually you're going to want to, know that you're putting in wholesome ingredients in that, and also bettering your soil. It's about the, just sustaining the health of your soil, the environment, and also the safety of your workers and just the health of the people working.
Yeah, and for me, just
land.
as a private person, as my child, as I said, 5 years old, he puts a, they still put weird stuff in their mouth, and if I don't have any kind of chemicals, I don't have to worry about that, and it is nice to see him growing up around all these bugs, and he just collects and comes running, his hands full of worms or bugs, shows them to mama runs away, we have a big laugh, this is like...
Oh wow, that's really cool. He's got a budding interest in natural science.
Absolutely, and makes me super proud. And it also shows me that it's the right path, to go out of the city at the point when we left, because from the moment he was born, I was like telling my wife, nah, I don't know how long I can do city life anymore. I think it's like with a kid, first year was okay, still in Barcelona, but then, then it was hard for me to take. Then I was in that sense lucky. COVID just convinced my wife, not being able to leave the house for 8 weeks, like legally, the kid cannot leave the house. She was like, nah, I'm out of here. I need a garden. I need to live in the lands too. So.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have felt the same way as you. It's the same kind of like force that brought my parents, to make that decision back in the 70s, back to the land, back to a more sustainable lifestyle. And I think, the country, the city is great to have access to the country once in a while makes it better, right? I mean, if you're stuck in the city, it's difficult, right? Because I think all of us have that love of nature in us somewhere, some of us don't know it yet. And
growing something is also something different, no? It's like you have a special relationship to what you're growing, and therefore it just seems to taste better.
Yeah, it does. It does. Always does. And that's true for not just weed, but anything that you put your own love into, and just through a little bit of love every day, eventually, and patience, you get to something that is just really special,
Absolutely. One more time, I don't want to ride too long on this, your dad getting busted and, having to be a year away from you. How did that affect you, your relationship to the plant? Because you suddenly were confronted with the reality that other people have bad connotations about cannabis, and then B, about the authorities. Because for me, I haven't experienced anything like that, but still, thinking of cops, I just think of my opponents, not of my helpers, just because I know that, in the country I am, cannabis is not 100% legal, and they could, bust me. But you had to experience that as a child, so how did that influence you?
Well, I felt like you for most of my life as well. because of what happened, that instilled definitely a fear of the authorities, a fear of the cops in me. And also, my father's like, you're part of a conspiracy now, whether you like it or not. You have to be careful who you talk to, be careful what you do. You have to be smart. And the last thing I wanted to do was end up in prison as well.
Sure.
I wanted to find a safe way to continue working with this plant I loved. So everything I did, I was very careful, and had very little problems with the law. But not to say I didn't have a lot of close calls, and I just consider myself lucky today that I don't live in fear, because that was, for many years, I'm just walking the line. Like, I'm trying to do everything right. I'm not hurting anybody, but at any moment I could lose all of this. Right. So, it's really a nice thing not to live with that. Not to say that fear doesn't come back sometimes.
Of course.
A little bit of a vestige, but now, obviously, in the last few years, I've come out being able to, because of legalization, because of medical permits, I've been able to show my face, use my real name, and just, it feels good to be able to represent. And look, if something happens now, I'm ready to face it, and I'm pretty sure it's not going to be the end of the world, because we're not dealing in hard drugs here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you are like now in a better spot there in Canada. And as I said, if I wouldn't do what I'm doing if I'd live in Germany. I think we said it off record earlier. Here in Spain, I never have more than like 6 plants, 7 plants. I can't, I'm showing my face in a country where it's not 100% legal, How amazing would it be to have 100 plants, to go through a huge garden, even though it comes with a lot of work, but it would be amazing, to have that luxury. But for me right now, I'm providing for myself. My cannabis doesn't leave my house really, so just for that reason, just for a certain fear. But you said the love for the plant, because you said before you were just watering, you were helping out your dad. Did it spark like something in you during that time when he went, or did that have nothing to do? When did you really discover your love for the plant, your passion, that you knew, I'm gonna go with this?
My life started to take a different turn when I had a motorcycle accident when I was 16.
Okay.
And so I started, it was a long recovery process. And that summer, one of an uncle of mine, who was a farm worker, but he was introduced me to smoking.
Okay.
And it was just something that I found was really helped me come out of my shell, and also helped me deal with the pain. And it actually really changed my life. And we started to grow together. And
interesting.
I mean, we had some amazing genetics. That we were growing some seeds from Sensi seeds back then, big bud, and he already knew how, he was a good grower. I learned a lot from him. And what I really liked, we would go far into the forest. We had it was like guerrilla style growing, really place where people don't go. And that was part of the fun, was actually just being out there in nature, going early in the morning, carrying compost, a bag of compost on your back, and just there was a little bit of the thrill involved as well. But those were just beautiful plants, and the product was amazing. People loved my weed, and it became a full-time adventure for me for few years. At least during the summer, I was a student, and in the summer I'd go back to the farm and grow some weeds. So it became a lifestyle that I was embraced,
Of course.
wholeheartedly.
Sounds so fun. The first plants I ever grew were around that time. Unfortunately, I didn't know what I was doing then. And also guerrilla style somewhere, but in Germany, you don't have these untouched woods anymore, You walk by and most of them were gone because somebody took them away, and it's just like I lost interest, and I didn't have that possibility to just grow where I lived, like with my parents and stuff like that. At that time, I was still in the weed closet, even though they found it. But I'm stopping. Found my hash, my boxes of hash and stuff. But
Yeah.
So that was interesting. Wow. So you did that during around the time when you were still at home, but eventually you moved around a lot, and you never really stopped growing then, no?
Yeah, exactly. That was part of why, I guess that, Lowryder and autos emerged from all that, because it's a plant that I could just take anywhere, grow anywhere, whether it was like indoors in the winter or in my garden in the summer. It just didn't take a lot of effort. But yeah, I was in Vancouver at a very crucial time. I think, after this time we're talking about, I was growing and I finished school, and I went to join my girlfriend in Vancouver because at the time, that's when it was just going nuts as a city that was tolerant to weed.
Yeah, that's what the time was when Jorge was up there too, no? Before Jorge came to Europe and stuff, everybody was there.
Yeah, but he was there very early on. So you had this guy, Mark Emery, right? He called himself the Prince of Pot. He was pushing the envelope he started a store where they were selling seeds, and the cops had a lot of, they weren't bothering him because Vancouver has much bigger problems, especially with hard drugs. So, and they have more of a tolerant attitude to cannabis in general. So Vancouver became like an incubator for cannabis. Like a lot of people moved there to start growing and to start a business, whatnot. So, and I started to work a little bit for Mark Emery. He had a magazine called Cannabis Culture. Mm-hmm. So that was like, start to write some articles. And from then, it's a bit of a long story, but I ended up getting an opportunity to go to Poland.
Exactly, I heard about that before. Before that was that you in the end had a comparative trial there, correct?
Yeah, at that point, like the sort of like the mothers of Lowryder, whatever it was before, was just one of these strains that I was testing out. I brought all my different seed strains, and I was able to do this comparative trial in Poland the second year that I was there, because I was studying hemp, but they knew that my real interest was in, THC cannabis.
Yeah.
So I was able to get a part of their greenhouse to do a comparative trial, and it was actually, we started quite late in the summer, and it was, so this was the parent of Lowryder, which was at the time, which was only called Willie's Automatic. Mm-hmm. It became, it just stood out as something that flowered really early, and that was really quickly. And so that was before we were really understanding what we had.
Okay.
But
before we get too tangled in that, let's start, because then let's really start talking about Lowryder, because otherwise people are gonna be mixed up, because I really want people to really know what this is about. This is what founded your legacy, kind of, you know what I mean? I want to talk about your tips about growing autos or automatics, autoflowers, whatever you want to call them in general, but I want to know the history, and I think it's about 20 years this year, no, that Lowryder hit the market?
Exactly, yeah, it's 20 years. 2003 that we came out, that we actually sold our first batch of seeds.
Yeah.
And so that was the first generation of Lowryder. but it was actually a few years in development. It
Of
started
course,
a
yeah.
few years before.
Let's just check
Like,
what drove you away in the end. Because you said people really loved, like you were a teenager before you moved out. You grew bombshell weed. I heard Big Bud, like that was new at that time, you know. It wasn't, it was, you know. And what drove you to switch a bit away from the buds to the seeds, to the breeding? What sparked your interest for the breeding?
well, there was a friend of mine who was an older fellow, a really interesting guy from called Antonio.
Okay.
I've talked about before. He was a bit of he was kind of like a Mexican Rasta man. He was like really wise and knowledgeable about weed, and he just had this incredible energy. And he was one of the friends that I grew up knowing close by. He had this really amazing knowledge about cannabis.
So he was
And
kind of,
he
on top of
collected
that, you
seeds.
already grew up with a cannabis growing father. You had cannabis grows, guerrilla grows with your uncle. You also had Antonio, Mexican Antonio, who was another mentor. So you were really blessed with figures, older people who really gave you a lot of knowledge about the plant.
It's true. It's true. This, where I grew up here in the Eastern Townships, it's not as well known as like BC, but it does have a history because of all these old hippies who moved to the country and brought seeds with them from traveling in Afghanistan and Colombia and whatnot. This area was known to have really good weed, and a lot of my friends, my generation growing up, you know, we shared this interest and we traded seeds. Like I was well surrounded, that's for sure. And it was just an amazing place to come from in terms of the influences and the mentors. Antonio was definitely one of those, and he collected seeds more than like most people had just their one strain or whatever, or some seeds, but Antonio definitely had a collection. And one of the seeds that he had that he originally gave me was called Mexican ruderalis.
Oh, okay.
And it's
Mexican Rudy, the infamous, famous Mexican Rudy. For all people who love Autoflowers, you probably heard about it because that is the ancestor of what you created, right?
Exactly. So back to, Mexican ruderalis, it was one of the strains that he had. But the unique thing about this was that, like, I visited Antonio one time, and it's the middle of summer. And it was one year when there wasn't a lot of weed around. Nobody had anything to smoke. You know, there were some dry years back then, especially in the middle of the summer. So it's July, and visit Antonio, and he has some plants that are ready. He was just picked, and they were drying, you know, upside down, and they were just really small plants. They were like, wow, you know, flowered in the middle of the summer, and it was ready. Called it Mexican Rudy. It had a nice taste, but it was really all buzz. Like it was a very light buzz. Of course, we didn't complain. It was still nice to have something to smoke.
Yeah, better than nothing. Good. No, better than nothing.
Better than nothing, right? So that happens to be like, we didn't understand how it worked or whatever, but he gave some of those seeds to me and my buddy Christian, and we ended up starting a growth. So I was like, the transition from living on the farm to living in dorm rooms when I was studying, and then living in apartments. Now I was looking to have plants that were much more compact, just fast.
Okay.
Thought that was really quick.
That makes a lot of sense. So that's kind of the answer to my question. That was like going from farmland, going into dorms, like being in Vancouver or whatever, in cities, in small apartments. You needed smaller plants. You needed to be more stealth.
Exactly. And I became more and more interested in just creating more compact, small strains, because I was working on some other genetics before Lowryder came around, it just didn't work out. Lowryder was something that took several years before we actually realized what we had, and before we isolated these characteristics. Because
so you had the Mexican Ruderalis now from Antonio, and you were with your buddy Christian, you said, and you guys had a grow together. So you started then experimenting, like crossing them, creating hybrids of different strains. Is that correct?
Exactly. What happens was we had a room. We shared an apartment in Vancouver, and we had a guest room. So we divided it up, and he had his plants on one side. I had my plants on my side. And if you knew Christian, you would understand, because he's like, everything he does is very, very well organized.
I have a friend Christian like that, so I can relate.
Yeah. So we ended up crossing everything that he had and everything I had. We just made a lot of different crosses, and experimental crosses. So those, among those crosses was the Ruderalis. So we crossed it with Williams Wonder. We had the Williams Wonder mothers. Crossed it with Northern Lights, number 2 that we had back then.
Nice.
Crossed it with a bunch of different things, actually.
And they just went into your seed collections then, those seeds, or you started working on them right away?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it was growing on a small scale, so I was limited on what I could test and what I could do. And I was trying to develop something that I could probably take to the market.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and I knew for us back then, we looked at it as it would be something new, something really cool that like anybody could grow. It was just something that's very easy to grow and will make it more accessible. Of course, we had no idea that, eventually it would lead to a whole new category of cannabis, right?
Yeah, but so then you had in your hands, and did you give that a name already then, like or did you just take those seeds with you to Poland? How did it evolve out of crossing these with each other?
Yeah, the seeds were taken to Poland, and those were the first generation of crosses that I had. So, as you know, like F1s, when you cross an automatic with a non-automatic,
they're not
over the regular.
They're faster, but not auto.
They're fast, but they're not automatic, right? They don't flower under 24 hours of light or whatever. So it was like only after 2 or 3 generations later that the auto trait came back. So it was like basically a cross of Ruderalis, the Northern Lights, and Williams Wonder. It was like a 3-way cross that was then inbred for 1 generation, and I was growing.
You did that in Poland, no? You inbred that in Poland, or no? During that comparative trial, or what? That?
Exactly. We made it was inbred in Poland, but those seeds didn't realize then I moved back to Canada, right? And I happened to be in Saskatchewan, living in the prairies, working for a company growing hemp, selling hemp seeds. That was my day job. And on the side, I was still working on my
of course, makes sense.
My strains, but I was growing in my friend's basement because I had to be careful.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And this guy Dave, and he's still my best bud, he was a photographer. So a lot of the information, a lot of the photos you see from back then, he was documenting everything.
Cool.
And we were growing in his basement, and we were growing this generation of seeds. And the weirdest thing happened because we were growing under 24 hours of light, like under fluorescence, just starting.
Just for the beginning of the vegging,
Yeah, no timer, whatever. And we had these after, it was just over 2 weeks, these like 3 or 4 little male plants start to appear, like tiny little seedlings starting to put out male flowers.
Yeah.
We're like, what the hell is this? This is not supposed to flower.
Yeah.
They just started growing, you know. But both of us were pretty excited about it. We ended up like keeping all those plants and basically forgetting about everything else.
You crossed them with
so,
with the females of the same plant who also came in early.
Yes, exactly. We crossed them with the females, but the females obviously started to flower just like a week or two later,
Makes sense,
right?
yeah.
Because males start to flower usually a little quicker. But all of these plants that had this auto trait, we kept them. So the next generation, they turned out 100% automatic.
Sure.
We're like, you know, we didn't understand. I didn't come from a background of genetics necessarily,
Okay.
right? So
Yeah.
we're learning this as I go along. Okay, so this is a recessive trait that's coming back, you know?
Yeah.
But, and we weren't calling it Lowryder. To answer your question, it was Willie's Automatic.
Oh, from the Williams Wonder,
it
because
still
the
had
Williams
flavor.
Wonder was one of your favorites before, no? You had the mother of that, no?
Yeah, I really loved the taste of the Willies that we had. And the taste still, it came out a little bit in those first generation of Willie's Automatic. Now, then a little later, we decided to call it Lowryder. I was reading, I actually got the idea. I was reading this magazine called Lowryder. About the Chicano lowrider
the
car
no?
culture,
Like the
LA. You know?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no, exactly.
And because it has Mexican, you know, some Mexican ancestors.
Makes sense.
You know, so we come up with it.
Cool idea.
Except we put a Y in it. Just to change the. So
definitely. So then Lowryder, you had Lowryder. How many? Because then you had the autogene stabilized from there on. How long did the selective process take from there? Because I'm sure you grew, once you had the seeds, you had to pop them right away to see what happened, no? And then how did it go from there?
Right. So it started out as like, it was really small scale, man.
Yeah,
it was
of course.
like, internet was just starting to be a factor back then. Like, to get the word out of there about Lowryder, I was really active on a lot of forums. I don't know if you've heard about like overgrow.com and Hybrid.
Hybrid, you were running that, no? You were running that forum.
Yeah, I was running that. Yeah, and it was sort of like just a place where everybody was like talking about autos. It was just an amazing forum, and the idea spread like wildfire. You know,
of course, because it makes everybody able to grow in the end. You know, it makes everybody the possibility to have like a smaller plant, and you don't have to, you know, be so on top of it. You don't need a light schedule for it. And it was just something novelty, and not everybody, but a lot of people looking for something new, interesting.
Exactly, and it wasn't necessarily your big growers who are interested, as people maybe who didn't grow before, because this just makes it easier for anybody to grow. You don't have to be a commercial or professional grower. You just want to have your own stash. Exactly.
So how did that affect, like as I said, the black market? How did you do it then? You started making batches right away from that, and then developing it more and more through a selective process?
Exactly. And there were definitely some mistakes were made in the beginning, because the fact is that because we were growing on such a small scale, there was some variations between like the first generation that we officially called Lowryder. Was just actually really good quality, really had that taste of the Williams Wonder in it, and it was strong enough. It was quite strong, but because we grow 2 or 3 generations in such a small numbers of plants,
you lose
that
like
led to a certain amount
every
of
form of
inbreeding.
hybrid vigor is non-present anymore. You have like nothing.
Right.
I can see that. Yeah.
So, and you had you had like a proportion of plants were just too small.
Okay.
Very small plants. Some of them were a little weird. there was too much inbreeding happening.
Okay.
So then I start to make new versions of, for example, like the diesel rider. So then bring in some new genetics, make a new version of automatics, the diesel rider, the chronic rider, you know.
And that was also eventually that you developed the Lowryder number 2, no?
Yeah, so the Lowryder number 2 actually was the, you know, when we talk about Lowryder, it's probably Lowryder number 2 that we should be, we're like most people knew and tried, because it became one of the most successful strains of all time, Lowryder number 2. Well, yeah, what it was taking the Lowryder, original Lowryder, and crossing it to the Santa Maria.
Okay.
Which was, I believe, a Brazilian strain that I got seeds from, and it just had amazing flavor. It was very strong. It was quite, you know, popular at the time. Not like super well known, but it was like a really elite genetic. So injecting like the new, bringing that new blood into Lowryder number 2 was much stronger, more stable, and more, and that's the one that really took off and became one of the most popular strains of its time.
And they were all regulars by that time still, or you were already putting feminized out at that point?
We started to put out feminized. It took us a couple years to figure out the feminization.
Okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
So we were selling regular seeds.
And this was all still happening in the black market at that time, right?
Absolutely.
And how did it change that when you finally got like the medical, like that you had to live a little less in fear and that you could get the scale a little bit further up, because I think you got some sort of medical license, right?
Exactly. Yeah. For several years, I had a license as a medical grower, and as a designated grower. Basically, I had a couple designated patients who I was allowed to provide for. So it wasn't any type of commercial license that actually allows you to buy or sell cannabis products, but it was a form of protection where, yes, I could invest in my own greenhouse.
Yeah.
I could grow my own plants openly,
yeah,
and not be afraid of the cops showing up, as long as I basically have, you know, not a lot more plants than my numbers or whatever. So
sure.
And it started to be more of a tolerant, just atmosphere in general towards growing.
Yeah.
But to be honest, it was also a big distraction to be a medical grower, because I took it seriously.
Yeah.
And it was, you know, yes, it was a means to an end. It was a way for me to continue what I wanted to do, which was breeding cannabis and creating new strains. But it became a whole, it took on a life of its own.
Yeah. I mean, I 100% understand. Sometimes if I'm providing for myself and I'm testing a lot, sometimes I'm just, you know, F1 breeding a little bit here and there for myself, just for the fun of it. And I know sometimes, you know, every home grower knows trimming jail. And, you know, once you start providing for others and you take it serious, as you said, you have another job on top of the breeding, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so, and it's about trying to maximize. So if you're a grower, now you have a license to do it. It was hard to get that license. So now you feel like you have to grow as much weed as you possibly can, just to make ends meet.
Yeah, of course.
Because often these patients can't pay very much for their product, or you have to provide it for free and then do your little things on the side.
Of course. Yeah.
So, it was, but I do enjoy growing. It was amazing to be able to grow out in the open, and what I like about growing here in my own greenhouse is people can visit me and a lot of times they want to go. They don't want to come in the house. They want to go straight to the greenhouse. So how are those plants doing? And it's like a show and tell. I can
of
give
course,
them a tour.
of course.
It's like there should be that. It's like a little bit of cannabis tourism.
One day I'm gonna come for the joint Dr. Cannabis tour through his own greenhouse. One day for sure. Can't wait for that.
I love it.
In the end of the day, we all want to be safe, but all this legalization, the big deal they make about it is not easy, no?
No, it's really they went too far into the heavy regulation, treating cannabis like we're producing let's say like
opiates.
Or toxic weapons of mass destruction or something. The security is just unreal, and so much waste of resources, with so much bureaucracy, and everything now has to be packaged in tiny little packages for the consumer, one portion at a time in plastic. It's just like it's
wasteful, and then on top of it, it's not even good. I just have like these jars here or here, these jars. There's just simple glass jars. They're airtight. You open them up, put like a Boveda pack in it, and you keep your herbs fresh for months and months and months. If I put it in a little plastic bag and it takes a long time to get to the consumer, all I'm getting is a little bit of crumbles, That's just
exactly
sad.
Yeah, it's really sad. Yeah, so it does take the fun. It takes a lot of the fun out of it. Luckily, like it's we still have a long way to go. The fight's not over.
Nah, the fight's never gonna be over though. But the fact that we are here talking about it, and that I'm not hiding, even though I'm in a country where it's not fully legal. I have other people who are in countries I talk to. Daga DNA, he's a grower from Slovenia. It's super illegal there. He goes now. He shows face. He knows he's not doing anything wrong. He's providing for himself. He's providing medicine. I'm not hurting anybody. In fact, I am buying things. I'm buying fertilizers. I'm buying, grow tents. I'm buying lights. There's a huge industry there. You're doing something good for the economy. That's what it is. I'm not hurting anybody, and that's what we have to come down to realize. And hopefully, more and more all over the world, it will be like that.
A lot thanks to guys like you. I mean, or really helping getting the word out there. Just education.
And just trying to destigmatize. I can't make it legal, but I can break the stigma. There is nothing wrong. There was the other day. I was there was a few people over at my house. There is alcohol all over the tables, right? All over the tables. There's beer, there's wine, somebody has a gin and tonic, and I put my grinder and my packs down on the table, walk away from the table, and walk by the table again, and then me as the guy, takes the grinder and the packs and puts it somewhere else because of the kids. And then realizing and telling to myself, am I nuts? There's alcohol all over. Nobody's putting that alcohol away. Nobody's doing that. But I have to feel like I have to put the cannabis away. Not easier to drink a sip of a drink than to burn one down, to roll one up. You must know. You're a doctor. You're a joint doctor.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. Well, I'm not a real doctor. Actually, my mother's a real doctor.
Yeah.
But I'm doctor of cannabis, honorary doctor of cannabis, I hope. But,
definitely. I'm gonna bring you your cannabis doctor title when I'm gonna come over one day. Honorary one. I find
Awesome.
enough. I start a petition, and I'm sure I'm gonna find enough signees for that.
Sounds good.
How was it for you to see Lowryder, your baby? I mean, I know how it feels to be honored for something like winning the Autoflower World Cup, but it's not my personal strain. It's the company I work for created that strain. I grew it, so it's my baby. But your baby, your creation, your genetics, to see what happened, to see Lowryder get out of this in the world, you know. You're also making on top of it money of it. But you see, it starts an entire new category of cannabis. You know, how did that make you feel back then and now?
I'd say back then it was exciting. You know, it was exciting to be like people not necessarily knew me personally, but knew what, like, especially that when we're talking about the people, my peers, like other breeders and whatnot, started to respect me and accept me as one of their equals, you know, and to be able to get to know, you know, people I looked up to, like breeders like Simon from Serious Seeds, and a lot of these old school breeders, and, you know, starting to basically, like, you know, be one of them, this, you know, this tight-knit sort of scene of breeders. It was just it was exciting, you know, but I don't know, I still want to do better. There's still a lot of work to be done.
There's always more work to be done, Sasha. Let's be honest. You know, if it would be at the end, would it be worth being here?
Yeah.
You know, like there has to be something which comes next. But to have also not only older breeders respect you, but also have like younger breeders come onto you and show you, look what I created out of your Lowryder. How's the feeling like that? You know, it's just like to see it continue.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, that's the most amazing thing, because it was like, yes, Lowryder was there. It was almost like a moment in time. You know, it was a breakthrough. It was kind of like a eureka moment.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
Since then, so many people, so many talented people like you have taken it to another level and taken what Lowryder was and created bigger and better versions. Of course I can't do, I'm just one person, I can't do everything. And there's better breeders, there's bigger growers.
It's always better everything.
There's always new ones,
yeah.
Right? So it's like, and I always took an attitude to basically, your genetics are gonna get out there anyway.
Yeah.
You might as well just accept that, you know, this is going to take a life of its own now, and you can't control it, really. There's no way it's out there.
Like it's still genetics. It's still like, I hope we won't come to the point that we are like having that with some genetics of crops somewhere, places over the world, that they put like a trademark symbol on it, you know, because that's just, that will never work. It will never, like, people will always go against that in the end of the day, you know. And if you see like modern autos, you know, or automatics, autoflowers, whatever you call them, you know, I just sprouted one of your, actually today, I sprouted one of your Devochka. Is that how you say it? Devochka?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, because so I'm like, you always try out different strains, and then you have like our strains, like, you know, like the Gorilla cookies or the Strawberry Gorillas, Tropicana cookies. If you see those modern strains, like, what do you think?
The way that the seeds are marketed today is very, very innovative, very dynamic. You know, like it's a whole generation beyond what it used to be. But it's moving so quickly. It's very hard. It's hard to keep up. You know, it's like, I like to think of it as like, it's like the music industry.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, nothing is really developed in a vacuum. Your beat probably comes, your ideas always comes from other influences, right? And there's like when you get a tune, now there's a remix now that's gonna come out, and a whole bunch of remixes, and it's moving much quicker than it ever did before.
But we are in luck with the Autoflowers that we have such short growth cycles, and even though we can't keep any mothers, we can keep on breeding, and it also keeps us on our feet, don't you think so? Because you can't just, you know, go and do the cutting and, you know, self that cutting and just like sell that over and over and over again. You just have to keep on developing, and the market is just crazy how fast it develops.
Absolutely. You know that from personal experience. Fastbud is just very innovative, coming out with new strains all the time, and you've really hooked into that like more dynamic way of marketing. And yeah, you have to be, otherwise, like, because it's moving so quickly, you know.
Yeah, and there's a demand for this whole, like, this whole for me, not the other end of it, the whole not just the automatic. I love that gene that like locks it, that makes everything so quick and the turnaround so fast, and also, you know, simpler, you know, easier. But on the other end, you have all these different flavors. You know, the dessert strain market, what's happening in California for the last 10 years or so, it's just crazy what kind of flavors, and the demand is there, the people want it, and it is amazing how you make, compared to 20 years ago, how you can make strains taste like strawberry, you have cherry, you have, you know, you have the banana purple punch. When I threw that in for the first time and I grew it, I'm like, this is not only beautiful because it's purple, but it also literally tastes like a fruit basket. I mean, this is just like, you know,
amazing. Especially like weed actually lives up to its name, and you can taste that flavor. I mean, yeah, it's amazing. It really is.
Absolutely. And yeah, and then the potency game, like, you know, everybody was like saying like, or still people are still saying, oh, autos, they're not really potent, they're not really. And then you come along with our Strawberry Gorilla, 28.417% tested at the American Autoflower Cup. So what else do you got to say to that? You know, this is just
end of conversation, right?
That's just it. That's it. Okay, let's move on from here and continue and think. And then I see do you see on Instagram? I started more and more following on Instagram, and I don't know if you ever heard of him. He's from Canada too, Canametos.
Just vaguely, I've heard of him.
Yeah, he grows exclusively autos, a lot of our autos, and he now grows in a system called Megapots. This is like an auto self, you know, watering system. I'm starting it soon too. And he has these autos in 60-liter bags. 60-liter bags under 24 hours of light, and he yields one plant a pound. Dried weight pound. I mean, come on. Now people say autos are small. Also not. We have modern genetics nowadays, which are, you know, mind-blowing. Talking about that, which autoflowering genetics, automatic genetics, modern ones are blowing you away nowadays? Like, what would you like? Did you come across some stuff? I mean, you were judging the Autoflower World Cup. Did you come like and you said, whoa?
The overall quality of all the strains was surprising.
Yeah.
So it was difficult. It was difficult to pick one. It was a difficult thing to judge, actually, because
makes sense.
The quality was really higher than ever for autos. There was an auto purple punch, which I thought was just. It looked like a purple punch, the colors and everything. I'm always a big fan of purple colors.
Oh, then you must have noticed my Tropicana cookies, which in the end won, because that was so dark. That was almost black, that one, and it was so frosty.
Oh, yes. That was the one then. That was the one then. Because when we were judging, obviously we were just working with numbers, right?
Yeah.
So I didn't know what strain we were testing, but we tested quite a few strains.
Yeah.
That's
you must have gotten pretty high then, no?
Oh my God, higher than I've ever been, but it was a good high. And funny thing is, like, after during the show, I've been like testing maybe 20 or 30 strains in 24 hours, and then I'm having to do some interviews and media opportunities, and I'm like, man, don't you understand? like I just smoked 20 joints today, but
I know exactly what you're. Well. That's why on a day like this, when I want to stay really focused on an interview like today, you didn't see me yet. My packs in my hand, nothing. I'm sober as I can be, because I really want to focus, and I really wanted to really get to the bottom of a lot of things and talk with you. And if I get high right now, I'm drifting off left and right. I mean, it will be fun. It will be fun to watch, but it won't be as informative as if I stay sober. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, I hear you. It's pretty much the same for me as well. I thought so, but it was like, it's either one or the other, you know. It was the right time.
It was an Autoflower really World Cup, and I mean, for you especially, for the great grandfather of all of them, and in the end you won too. No, you had some grower entered your I think it was Doctor's Choice #1, no, and you won second best sativa.
Exactly, second best sativa auto. It was a surprise for me as well.
Because you didn't know that somebody had entered it.
I didn't know, and even when I smoked it and tried it, I didn't know that it was my strain until later when we won the prize. So it was a really nice surprise.
Yeah, I can see that.
It was nice to get some recognition in terms of like official, recognition, a trophy.
Of course, yeah.
It was a wonderful moment, and I thought it was a great, well-organized event.
It was a lot of fun. It was cool. I mean, and it had a lot of different judges from all over, from all different backgrounds. So I mean, I love this whole Spannabis weekend is great because it gives smaller competitions the possibility to just take place with an international audience and international contestants too. You know, there were contestants from all over because people, were in Barcelona anyway, so they could just enter. And it was also nice that they make it accessible for everybody. You can just enter this competition. It doesn't cost you anything, and you can just go and enter this competition, and then you have the chance to win.
Oh, for sure.
Sasha, where do you see Autoflowers in 5, 10, or even maybe another 20 years from now? Tough one.
It's a tough one. Hopefully, like more work with other cannabinoids, other cannabinoid profiles. So it won't just be focused on THC. You'll have specific maybe combinations of THC, CBD, CBG, more stability in terms of the flavors.
What do you think in terms of that people like, how they are still, even though we talked about how strong and how great flavor profiles modern strains have, some people say, no autos, that will get less and less and less. The I don't want to say stigma, but like that, like being looked down upon.
Oh, absolutely. It's already gone way down.
Definitely.
The stigma, I find that for your average person, the stigma isn't really there anymore.
Yeah.
Now for your old school growers, a lot of them you will never convince necessarily.
Probably.
And they don't have to change. I mean, there's a lot of reasons to grow regular strains as well, especially if you're a commercial grower who's trying to grow, you're growing clones, you want one generation to be exactly the same as the next,
sure,
and each plant to be, identical. There's reasons for that, but I think there'll be, as we develop strains that are more stable, because it takes time, to, not that the strains that are here today aren't amazing. My strains and your strains are, there's some really amazing flavor profiles out there, but to sell it to the commercial growers and to the big growers of the world hasn't quite worked out yet.
I think it will come.
Okay, it's hard to say.
I think it will come. I think that it will be just like, it will be just like I want it or I don't want it kind of thing. I don't think. And I think we will also probably learn a lot more about the autos because, some growers, especially the ones who come with preconceptions, like people who already grow for photoperiodic strains, often run into much more trouble than a newbie with an autoflower because they overtreat the plant, no?
Exactly. They have this preconceptions about it, and that's it. But that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there's many ways to grow.
Do you have a tip for people to grow autoflowers? Like, what would be like your number one tip about growing autoflowers in general to have better results than maybe before?
Well, I would agree with like what you were hinting at a little earlier, was just like a lot. Don't overthink it.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, get to know your plant, and if you're overthinking it, over fertilizing, for example, that's where you're going to be the one causing the problems, right? It's not going to be, you'll be the pest, right? So don't overthink it, but at the same time, pay attention to your plants, spend a little time with your plants, don't get to know what they like to eat, like what the fertilizer regime is.
Exactly.
It depends, and everyone's situation is a little different. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think also always don't overthink it, don't overdo it, let them be. You don't need to train autos like crazy. You don't need to, over fertilize them, and play around and love the plant. In the end of the day, that will just show in the weed.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm more of a low intervention guy when it comes to the pruning and the training of plants. Yeah. I mean, there's not much you have to do with autos. That's one of the advantages, right? You can sit back and mostly let it go. If you just realize that you have to give it a good start and give it everything it needs from the beginning.
Yeah.
Because if you, because the life cycle is short.
Absolutely, yeah.
So,
yeah, for example, what I just learned, I'm using like dry amendment super soil kind of thing, like where I'm pre-mixing everything and all I'm doing afterwards is compost teas. That line comes with the top dress. What I don't, like a tasty flower top dress or something it's called. I just mix it in right away. Because it doesn't make sense to wait, give it to the plant, and then especially if you have like a really healthy living soil, the plant will just find what it's there eventually, and it will take what it needs. It doesn't, you don't need to overthink it. That's what the beauty about it is.
Exactly. And it learn to read the signs of the plant. Mm-hmm. If there's a deficiency, if it's your plant needs more nitrogen, you've got to pay attention to the signs.
Absolutely.
And and just don't overdo it.
One grower asked, Slow Pope Fuego Bud. She grows some really fire buds. She helped me out when I was in Berlin, so I could. She brought me some of our herbs, so I could share it with some other people. She asked me, because I asked earlier on Instagram and asked like who has any questions. So I like her question the best. 3 strains you're gonna take with you on a cannabis-free island.
I've actually thought about this situation more than once.
Okay.
What would I bring to a deserted island? As long as I had something, I think I'd be good. But I don't know if this is an answer that she'll appreciate. But I would almost rather bring a bag of mixed seed to this island. Okay. Not knowing what they are.
Okay.
Just so that I have a representative gene pool that has a little bit of everything in it, and then you can find seeds that work well on that, in that location.
I love the answer. Absolutely love the answer, because I know how you feel, and it's just like, I'm sure we talked about this earlier. You had like a seed collection. I'm like from a very young age on, and I'm sure you still have them, even though you are, or especially because you are a breeder, and it is just something very dear. Like in the refrigerator, I have like a shoe box, which is way too stuffed full with all different genetics, just because it's just, even though they're not popped, and maybe some of them I should pop them because they're getting too old, but it's just like something, it ensures a little bit, makes me a bit calmer to know that I have all sorts of genetics, enough for the rest of my life to play around with if I need to.
Exactly. Well, I know the feeling. Same thing, man. Same thing. It's like you never know what's gonna happen. It's,
absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I hope something happens very soon. I hope that we see each other in person, because this was super nice. This is super nice to talk with you, to have the possibility. You're in Canada, I'm in Spain. We're here, and we're gonna, bring this to the entire world for people to watch. But I really hope to see you again in person. Spanibus was a lot of fun to see you, meet you, talk, and hang out. Have a like-minded person. And that's why I love these fairs so much. It's like the best thing about them, like really to connect with people who are, like-minded, and talk and geek out about, our beloved plant.
Yeah, I love it. It's really it gives you a lot of energy, doesn't it, to meet all these people, like and people who who say thank you.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
I tried your seeds, and they have their story, and
absolutely,
it's great. You come back with a really renewed energy, because on the day-to-day level, growing and breeding, it's not necessarily about that.
No.
It's just kind of like grinding, a little bit of work every day, trying to stay organized, but then meeting
yeah,
people like you, and feel a sense of belonging.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
Like spreading your family out a little bigger, a little.
Maybe I come to Prague. Are you going to Prague or no?
Oh yeah, Cannafest will be in Prague as well, so that would be amazing.
I would hope that I'm gonna meet you at Cannafest. I can't guarantee yet, but I would really like to come to Prague. I haven't been to Prague in like 12 years, and it's a beautiful city, and it's a different thing experiencing these.
A lot of good things that come out of cannabis are the result of just shared passion, and not necessarily doing something for the money, for the profit. But that being said, maybe in the next time we talk, you and I should talk about doing some kind of collaboration, in especially looking to the Canadian market, and a lot of people would appreciate your seeds. So
I mean,
who knows?
That is the best thing as well, and that I think was the first time really this year in Spanibus where it had that vibe. Like, there was so much collaboration vibe out there, so beautiful, like how people start working more and more together, and realizing that of course there's competition, but competition is good, because it drives us, and in the end, if we compete and we can collaborate, we're just gonna evolve, and we are in the end in for the same cause. We are in for the plant, for the love of the plant, and I think that is just something.
You can and you can tell the new ones that are coming in, that are not going to be around in 1 or 2 years, but the ones that stick around, that are in it for the right reasons, for the passion, we've become like a family. We respect each other, and that's one of the best things about this. So keep up your good work.
Thanks, man. Same to you, and thanks for thanks for everything, and thanks for being there. Thanks for joining and sharing everything. And don't forget,
thanks for having me.
It's 420 somewhere.
Cheers. It always somewhere.
Thanks so much, man.
Fast Buds.